Hey, welcome back, everybody, to BackTrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and what you call a day's work, I call genocide. I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Gooey Fame, and I'm taking up filing.
Yeah, I heard you're a real whiz at it, too.
I'm going to teach a class and everything.
Yeah. And we've returned to explore the inspirations behind your favorite episodes of Star Trek. Well, heard any news lately?
Everything's pretty normal right now.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing interesting, honestly.
I just want to see the look on the faces of Gwyneth Paltrow and everybody else when they get a huge royalties check in a couple months. Like, what is going on? Oh, yeah, we were in that Steven Soderbergh movie a while ago.
Right. Oh, okay. I was like, what are you talking about?
Oh, yeah.
No, I've been having that a lot lately with that movie because people keep bringing it up, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I saw that once. And then in theaters, I think, and then forgot about it.
Yeah.
So this has been a great reminder to maybe watch it again. I don't know.
Like, whoa, $500. Usually it's a couple cents, but those residuals, because it got played 50 million times. I don't think I ever actually saw it. I remember when it came out, and it's like, I see movies in theaters and love them or hate them, but I never remember them as much as movies that I debate with myself whether I want to see or not. And Contagion was one of those in 2011, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I like Soderbergh, but do I want to see him do, a Hollywood thriller, about a disease? And I don't care about Gwyneth Paltrow, and kind of down on Matt Damon right now. And so I just didn't see it, but I remember when it came out because I struggled with seeing it. I do remember seeing Outbreak, though, which came out in the 90s, like 97, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And that has just a whole bunch of canceled people in the lead roles, except for Rene Russo. I think she's okay. But
that's the risk you take with a 90s movie.
That's right. Just a bunch of people who...
is there a Kevin Spacey lurking around?
Oh, he absolutely is. Yeah. And there's Dustin Hoffman, who is like sort of stealth canceled because he did something or other. And I remember there's a big thing...
I didn't even know that. No.
Yeah, John Oliver was interviewing him and some other people at like a Kennedy Center type thing. And he was just like, and my question for you is, why are you such a piece of shit? Because you did this. And yeah.
Wow, okay.
And Cuba Gooding Jr.'s in it, and he has not been having a good time recently, and he's been up to all kinds of bad stuff. So.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that one.
Anyway, if you just forget all that stuff, it's a fun thriller, kind of potboiler. The monkey from Friends is in it.
Oh, the monkey, yeah.
Good stuff. But otherwise, yeah. Wow, what interesting times that we're living in currently. And it's bad when I heard the news that they're going to hold WrestleMania without an audience.
Yes. Oh, wow. Have you seen any clips of WWE lately?
No, I haven't. But I remember the old days of when WCW was on the ropes, so to speak, and they were doing. They couldn't sell out like the arena in Atlanta or whatever, so they were doing stuff to like an empty auditorium, or like really way back in the days of like the territory promotions, and somebody would get a TV contract, but they didn't have a venue, so it would just be two blonde guys, Irish whipping each other, and there's just nobody, nobody there, no audience.
That's awesome. I've never seen any of that, but
how do they do the WrestleMania though?
That's what's interesting is because I could see like the week to week being like, okay, we're going to have, Raw, and we're going to have some guy that we probably don't pay much we're going to have Rusev come in and like
lots of sketches
entertain you or whatever. Yeah. But like I'm seeing clips of like The Undertaker, and that is what is so funny to me is that like, Stone Cold Steve Austin, like these like mega stars are just like doing sketches that I've seen a lot of comparisons to the Eric Andre show. And I think they're apt. It's like hilarious. It's weird. It's funny. Like, I don't know how, they can keep doing that, but I think it's amazing.
Like some of the old live action skits on Rock and Wrestling.
Yeah.
Get Bobby Heenan in there to show you how to work out. And yeah.
No, it's I'm a big fan of it, honestly, though, so much of their, thing it involves having a live audience, so who knows how long that can go.
There was a period, like, what was it, like the early aughts, I think, kind of the last time that the WWE was, I need to find another metaphor, but on the ropes, like things weren't going well and attendance was way down. And so they were still doing arena shows, but they had, it was all like ground floor seating, and then they would just like tarp off the upper sections. So you just would forget that those were like completely empty, but there was only like 5,000 people there.
You could like hide that pretty well, but this is like, it's impossible,
Yeah, yeah.
Especially now, because you can hear everyone's, there's a lot of stuff you don't normally hear because it's like, it's mic'd, but you got the whole crowd and everything. But now you've got all these little micro expressions and and breaths, and you can just hear everything, and it's like it's amazing.
It's the applause echoes off of empty seats and walls a little more. So yeah, it's like when you listen to like a comedian or like a live show or something, and you can always tell, whoa, that's a big crowd, or that's a small crowd.
Yeah, it's effectively made a lot of the skits into like either the Eric Andre skits or like plays. It's just become a play.
Yeah, that's bad news. Although WWE is doing pretty good. I think that they'll probably be okay and come out of this all right. But yeah, it's something you don't think about, the way that their entire business model outside of merchandising has to do with large crowds of people that get together. And so, yeah, I mean, if the Stones are going to cancel their tour, then yeah, maybe the WWE shouldn't do live events right now.
Yeah, I knew they would do it eventually. I knew they would cancel it. A lot of people were like, they're not going to cancel. They're awful. And it's like, yeah, they are, but they want to be seen as legitimate. So if they're whatever everyone else is doing, they're going to do.
They got to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of industries that are feeling the pain, and I wonder how much pain they're feeling, or how much they can take it. Like I've heard that the airlines are screwed. The business is screwed. And they're going to need help from the government. And it's like, yeah, but why do they charge me like $700, but then on one day, but then a week later, it's like $200 for a ticket somewhere. Like, I think there's a lot of play there, right? Like, if they're meeting their overhead at $200 and the plane's half full, then what are we talking about here? Like, they're just losing profits, right?
Yeah, it seems like the common thing people say about like why airlines treat people the way they do sometimes is because you don't really have much of other choice. They can kind of get away with it. So now it's like, now that they're backed into a corner, it's like, it's kind of hard to feel sorry for them as much.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I feel. Somebody I do feel sorry for is movie theaters, because in addition to not being able to have people congregate over a certain level, depending on the region that you're in, you don't have anything to show, because many of the movie studios are deciding to delay the release of their films instead of let them open to a pretty much empty theater, like the one I saw Bloodshot in.
Same. That will be my last movie theater experience.
As you were going to Bloodshot, were you like, I'm going to die over Bloodshot? Bloodshot. If I die, and what was he doing? He went to see Bloodshot. Like, nobody's going to come to my funeral.
No one's going to feel bad for me.
Yeah. Right.
I was looking forward to it, but it wasn't worth risking my life.
No, definitely not in retrospect. I know that Regal has shut down. I think AMC has totally shut down now, too, for the next couple weeks. So
gotta cancel my stubs.
Hopefully you get your stubs money back. Yeah. And, some of these theaters I think will be okay, and some of them, I don't know, like they might be, like Regal is not a really big chain, right? At least not where I am. So couple weeks off. Yeah. Maybe they'll have to sell or get bought out by somebody. Who knows? But it's kind of scary, and it's frustrating because I was looking forward to Milan. I was looking forward to the New Mutants. They just announced that Black Widow's being pushed back, and these are all things that I wanted to see. Yeah, the Fast and Furious movie. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big disappointment. And then I saw like a lot of like my previous job I worked at, which is like a small, one-off restaurant, like they have to shut down. So a lot of people who work in businesses like that, like a lot of my friends are they set up like a GoFundMe and stuff because it's real rough for those types of places too, restaurants and bars and
We're the area that I'm at. They've closed all the restaurants and bars as of today, as this recording, but they're still open for delivery services. So hopefully, people who, if you're a server and that's it, you're kind of out of luck. But hopefully, like you can get a server and go, you got a driver's license, right? Here,
I have seen that happen.
You're a delivery driver now. Yeah. Hopefully they'll be able to shift people around a little bit. And I did it today. Like I was working at home and it got to lunchtime and we've got a ton of food, but I didn't have the time to make anything and I wanted to save some of the food for later. So I was like, I think I'm going to do a Jimmy John's. I think I'm going to take my life in my hands here and just, hope that not only are they, because they do a thing where they'll just drop it off at the door, but it's not the handing off of the food so much as like who's making the food. But I figure that they're smart. They wear the gloves and everything. And hopefully they're not coming in when they're sick. And so that's what you got to do.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of places they're taking extra precaution. I mean, there's always a risk, I guess.
Yeah, there's always a risk.
Don't know, but
these places would be, foolish not to take precautions.
Yeah, totally.
Because I'm not going to see anybody for the next week. So I know where I got sick from if it was the submarine sandwich.
Got looking out at you, Jimmy John.
Yeah, I'm going to get on my bike and come find you. So yeah, hopefully, I don't know. Where do you think this is all headed?
I don't know. Everything feels so weird right now. It's like, it's hard to think of like further than what the next day is going to be like. And then it's a big question.
I honestly think that we will be okay, like for now as a society. Because, society is elastic and can snap back. And I think ultimately we'll look back on this as like, I don't know if you remember, like when Hurricane Katrina hit.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a big deal. And at that point it was like, so do we just like tear off that part of the map where New Orleans is? And like it just destroyed a city basically. And I know it's still affected people in ways to this day, and the response at first wasn't really great, but New Orleans is still there and it's doing fine now. And it just kind of remains like that weird time that Kanye West was yelling at George Bush on TV.
Right.
So I'm hoping that in a couple years, this will feel like that.
Yeah, I don't think society will collapse, but it'll be like that. That's a good example.
Now we get to the other side of the coin, which is not a great year for this to happen. Ohio has basically canceled its primary, and it's like, well, you can't do that. Like we need to figure out who the nominee is going to be, and it's a contested situation. And if this continues to be a problem, it'd be real easy for certain parties who are already into vote suppression to be like, well, there's just not going to be a vote on this. We could be looking at, if I was going to try to overtake or overthrow the American democracy, this is where I'd start.
Yeah. And I was reading the Chicago Tribune's like update today, because we're recording right now, like while voting is happening for the Illinois primary. And there's a lot of like, it's been very rough, like, because a lot of people who are afraid to come and work the polls are dropping off and they're moving locations. And like, I saw places they had such low turnout, they were turning people away from voting. So it's like, this is kind of a disaster. And on top of, some of the other, like with how the Iowa primary was, like, it's just been like a sketchy couple of months. And society will be intact, but
well, let's hope so.
But it's dark days for sure.
You never want to see army trucks on a American street, but if they've got food in the back of them, great. If they've got soldiers in the back of them, not so great. And especially when we're looking at a contested Democratic convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The last time we had a contested convention in a Midwestern city for the Democratic convention. It was watch the movie Medium Cool. It was not a good time for anybody. So
never seen that movie, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, but just and then add a pandemic on top of that, and you got this sounds like a Will Smith movie. You know, we got a real blockbuster here.
This is some After Earth, After Earth,
just before After
qualities.
Earth. Yeah,
yeah.
So we'll see. But anyway, it's good to hear that you're healthy, and I think I'm doing okay too. Here's something that's not doing okay. Great segue. It looks like CBS, that is Viacom CBS, the merger between Viacom and CBS, wants to get rid of Simon and Schuster, their publishing division, which is the publisher of all the Star Trek books, and pretty much has been since Star Trek books up until and including now. Yeah.
So I wonder what would become of the Star Trek books.
I don't know. It's no small thing. I mean, there are definitely bigger publishing companies, but it's worth about $1 billion to $1.5 billion, their publishing arm. So I think that as a company, they don't consider it to be part of their core business, which is at this point, the streaming is the future. You know what I mean? Like the CEO is trying to get behind CBS All Access and all the new shows that they're making, and that's what they see as the future, not books. And this is where I get in trouble, because I know I've said for a while now that for a lot of people feel like this is too much too fast. Discovery, Picard, Section 31, an Enterprise under Pike show. Do we need all this Trek? And I'm like, whore it out, man. We've spent so many years in the basement being Trekkies. You ever kissed a girl? You know, being sort of like on the fringes. If this is going to be like the new big thing, the new Marvel or Vampire Diaries or whatever, I say go for it. But that kind of corporatization comes with, you know, making choices that are designed to maximize the profit. And so cutting off the book side of the equation, which has been around for so long and filled in the gap when the show was off the air and brought so many fans in, and it's something that so many fans enjoy, looking at that and going, oh, it's not our brand. That's extremely short-sighted, and the kind of thing a guy who has a suit and then his shirt is like blue but the collar is white, you know that kind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does it kind of mirror how they treated the Star Wars expanded universe a little bit, where it's like this doesn't matter as much anymore?
I guess, but I always imagined that Lucasfilm, which, you know, is owned by Disney now, I guess, valued that in the way that I'm saying. And I think that the reason that they jettisoned it as being official canon is because they needed space to make their new bad trilogy. I mean, we didn't know it was going to be bad, but they needed freedom to tell those stories. But that's why they went through the whole rigmarole with like, well, no, this is Legends canon, and then this stuff is official canon. So you can do whatever you want. You know, you can still read those. They all exist. They're just not going to be the way that we're going. And when they launched the sort of new canon, they immediately had like 2 or 3 books to go with The Force Awakens. They had an entire comic arm, you know, that Marvel with the Synergy was doing that. And this just seems to me like they just want to cast this off, and if somebody buys it, great. If they want to make more Star Trek books, and I have a lot of friends who are Star Trek book authors who definitely want to write them, they'll probably just license it to whoever owns the publishing wing and keep going. But I don't think that they really care. I don't think they really understand what they're doing.
Yeah, it seems weird to me. I guess I don't know the numbers on like how the Star Trek books do in terms of sales, but they feel like a big part of it. Like I haven't read many, but you know,
I don't really know either. But like you said, I feel like they are still significant in the minds of fans. This reminds me, this would be like if Kevin Feige came out with his little hat on and he's like, we're selling off the comic part of Marvel. Marvel is just going to continue as a movie franchise and a TV Disney Plus franchise, and the comics are not, you know, they're not part of our business model at this time.
Yeah. Well, except that I guess they're the adaptation, you know, they're like the direct inspiration.
Right.
Because like Star Trek, they're still making the show, which is like mainly what it is.
Yeah, but like TOS, yeah, okay, it was a guy who used to make a police show called The Lieutenant, who based it off of a bunch of British novels about a sea captain. But James Blish, Richard Matheson, Thomas Spurgeon, Harlan Ellison, all these guys that he got in to write the initial scripts that made Star Trek what it was were all sci-fi authors. Like, it has its roots in
true
50s and 60s sci-fi.
And from what I understand, like, you mentioned filling in the gaps, like, after the original series went off air, they still had, you know, the comics and maybe books even at that point. So, like, it's like not even just been like a important supplemental, but it's been like, for a while, like, what has kept the series going for some people. Yeah.
Not anymore, baby. So that's why it's I know a lot of people who are kind of have their fingers crossed right now, hoping that things will right themselves, but we'll see.
Anything could happen right now.
If only there was a Young Sheldon book. Maybe they would find it worthy to hold on to.
Young Sheldon meets Picard.
Right. Young Sheldon teams up with Picard and the guy from Blue Bloods, and we're going to solve this mystery. Who knows? Well, I think we should probably, at this point, get into our featured subject for today's show. There is an implied finality to the word justice, as if the sentencing and punishment of a criminal could reverse the harm done by that crime in the first place. For many of the victims of war and atrocity, there can be no justice for crimes against humanity and decency. No law can be applied to perpetrators who remain above the law, or who have escaped into death, or who claim to have been just following orders. And indeed, the very limits of justice have often been questioned when it's being pursued in the weary and delicate aftermath of a world war. Can the pursuit of justice endanger reconstruction? And what punishment could ever recompense the loss of so many human lives and such suffering? Those are the questions that were explored at the tribunals in Nuremberg in the years directly after World War II, and the subject of the 1961 film Judgment at Nuremberg.
Before the people of the world, let it now be noted that here in our decision, this is what we stand for: justice, truth, and the value of a single human being.
Where were we? Where were we when Hitler began shrieking his hate in the Reichstag? Where were we when our neighbors were being dragged out in the middle of the night to Dachau? Where were we when they cried out in the night to us? Were we deaf? Dumb? Blind?
I'm gonna go the limit. And not you, not the Pentagon, not God on his throne is gonna make you do
Who do you think you're talking to? Who the hell do you think you're talking to?
My husband was a military man, all his life. He was entitled to a soldier's death. He asked for that. That he should be permitted the dignity of a firing squad. You know what happened. He was hanged with the others.
It is easy to condemn the German people, to speak of the basic flaw in the German character that allowed Hitler to rise to power, but at the same time, comfortably ignore the basic flaw of character that made the Russians sign pacts with him, Winston Churchill praise him, American death threats profit by him.
There was nothing like you're trying to make it sound.
Did you sit on his lap?
Stop it! Stop it!
What else do you admit to, Mrs. Fowler? What else? Hello?
I want that you tell me, was she feeble-minded? My mother.
I feel it is my duty to point out to the tribunal that the witness is not in control of his mental processes.
I know I am not. Since that day, I've been half I've ever been.
3-hour-long movie.
Yeah. But, you know, it makes sense,
right?
I think.
Speaking of this is what 3-hour-long movies used to be. They were semi-documentarian films about people wrestling with justice and war and morality, and now it's like a purple guy snapping his fingers all the time. That's what we go and sit down and watch a 3-hour movie for.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And there's just so much in this. It's like so many different things, so many different thoughts and ideas and people and characters, and they're all like their own like little meditations on whatever they're talking about, as opposed to you know, we're all leading to that final showdown with the purple guy.
Right. Well, yeah.
So it's a fascinating movie in that, because it's just like, let's explore this. What does this mean? How do you feel? Yeah, it was really cool. I thought a really interesting movie. So.
Hashtag Thanos did nothing wrong.
Oh, no.
He was just following orders. He was just doing the right thing. That's another show. Anyway.
We could do it.
Yeah, I suppose we could. I think we proved we can do just about anything at this point. I'd never seen this film. It's something that I heard about a lot. I was familiar with, there's just a cavalcade of stars in this, including one William Shatner.
Yeah, he's a real screen stealer, I feel like.
I noticed that so you've got huge names in this, Spencer Tracy, Burt Lancaster, and Montgomery Clift. And he's like the first of the next card, right? So you get the card with like the 5 big names, Marlene Dietrich, and then it switches to and some more people. But he's definitely W and S. It's not alphabetical. Like, his agent got him on the top of the other guys.
Is this his breakout?
This is his first big film role. I think he had done 1 or 2 other things, but yeah, I mean, this is the first. This movie was nominated for 1 million Oscars, so it's definitely a big deal to be some part of it.
Yeah, he's got some magic in this one for sure.
Yeah. And it's it's arresting. I'm amazed that I hadn't seen it before. I don't know if they still do this. I think they probably should if they don't. But I remember watching a lot of concentration camp footage when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Did you have this?
Yeah, we'd have
so they still do
a
this.
week of it, and
yeah,
I don't know if they still do it, but probably. We watched. I'm sure we've watched clips of this or something. I think once we watched Schindler's List too.
Okay.
So maybe that's what I'm thinking of, but yeah, it just felt it did feel familiar a lot of the time watching this.
And I'm surprised that they just didn't show us because 3-hour movie you could chop that up over a week of a history class or whatever, and that we didn't just see this because it has concentration camp footage in it, but it also has a narrative that really gives you a political and social perspective on what's going on here, what the effect that this had on people. And instead, they just showed us, I think probably Discovery Channel was kind of around then, but they just showed us documentaries with a lot of bulldozers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It not much context, I guess, outside of these guys sure were evil,
Yeah.
But this gives you something to okay, what do we do or think now, or what led to this, or how did those people get there? It gives you so much more context that more than just thinking about boy, that sure was evil.
Yeah. And it's speaking of context, you have to remember that the movie was made in the early 60s. It came out in 1961. And so, of course, the context in this case is, and people felt this way at the end of World War II. Should we wrap this up? Is there a judgment left to be had? Are we focusing too much on this? And I don't think the movie, just in the course of what we see, definitely, I think the movie agrees. No, justice is justice at any time, and we shouldn't give up on it. But of course, as the movie starts to end, the events of the Berlin blockade and airlift begin, which of course was perpetrated by, the Soviets. And this is 1961. So we're talking Cuban Missile Crisis times. It's before the Ich bin ein Berliner speech, but the Cold War is definitely on everybody's mind as they're depicting really the birth of the Cold War at the end of the film.
Yeah. That was like, it's kind of in the not in the background, but it's like, you know, it's good for the frame of reference, I guess.
God, there's just 3 hours of this movie.
Yeah,
I don't even know how to attack it. So I guess just, you know, item by item. Did you like the movie?
I did. I thought it was, like I said, the subject is so interesting to me. Like,
yeah.
I was already somewhat familiar with just various stories or like ideas that have come out of the trials themselves.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to see like a narrative set around it, and also like, you know, people, you know, discussing those themes we talked about of justice and stuff. So the whole time was very, and all the actors were great. So like every performance was, you know, pretty compelling the whole time.
Yeah, it's literally like what you think of. It's literally just a movie where people talk for 3 hours. And
yeah,
I won't lie and say that there wasn't a moment or two where I was like, okay, but asleep, gonna shift around a little bit here. But that being said, it is arresting, and the most that they do, maybe this for 1961, this was like a real trick, but they do these like slow sort of dollies around the people that speak sometimes.
Yeah,
just to move the camera around a little, because I don't think he was actually. I think people like Pauline Kael or somebody at the time criticized him for just a lack of presentation. But I think that instead of wanting like a reverse shot, or like the guy is given his defense, so let's cut to what the judges think or something, like he wanted to make sure that the focus was on the person that was speaking, but yet we don't want people to fall asleep. And so they'd have these kind of really slow turns around, which I don't know, maybe metaphorically are supposed to represent a turning of people's, you know, presumptions about what the case was or something. But yeah, it was fairly static except for that kind of stuff. And Stanley Kramer is like, the director, was never like super flashy. Like he was known for these message films, I guess you'd call them. You know, he directed or produced movies like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Inherit the Wind, On the Beach, which was of course like a anti-war, like nuclear Holocaust film, The Defiant Ones. So he's the guy who, I'm trying to think of like who the equivalent would be today, but he's the guy that's like, that's deep, man. Oh boy, you got to think about these themes.
I felt like the direction in that, I did notice all those things, and I was kind of surprised by it. I was expecting a more standard like shot reverse shot, but instead it was like that extended scene or that like monologue by Burt Lancaster.
Yeah.
Was just, it really stuck out to me, and I was noticing all these little tricks that he would do throughout the film that I was like, oh, this is a little bit more care was put into this than I expected for some reason.
Yeah. But I think also at the same time, when it came down to like a bit of trickery or cinematic flounce, or just playing it straight, they almost always chose just play it straight. Like Spencer Tracy's last speech, where he's just basically talking about like justice and like, you're guilty. It's 11 minutes long, and it's all basically like one take. Like it's just, we're going to hear this guy just read this verdict out. And the most like stagey, the most like movie thing I can think of is there's that part really early at the beginning when, God, I'm trying to remember everybody's name in the movie, but Maximilian Schell's, Rolf, the defense guy, when he's talking in German, and then it kind of does this little whoop, and it kind of zooms into him, and now he's talking English. That's our little like Hunt for Red October thing, where it's like, you guys don't want to hear German for the whole movie, do you? So we're just gonna
like the tedious process.
Yeah,
of
we're just gonna.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you get it. We've committed to this for like 15 minutes. Let's just move on here and just, you know, we're just gonna go ahead with
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good move. But it's definitely something that like, it's just a kind of a movie thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I was maybe it's just like me expecting, like I'm just expecting like so much like editing to be faster or something. So like watching this where like there was something that was one take, maybe it was like not actually that interesting, but I was just like into the performance and I was like, oh, that's cool that they just like let it go, you know, just let the actor perform or whatever. But
yeah,
maybe that actually wasn't that interesting at the time, or like, you know, not that revolutionary or anything.
There is yeah, and then speaking of like Hollywood type movies, this would be the thing where you go into the like A Few Good Men is like this. You know, you have the courtroom scenes, and then outside of the courtroom, it's like, I don't know how we can win this case, but maybe if we look for these files, and then there's just some sort of side story, like some B story outside of the courtroom to give it more drive, you know, make it a little more exciting. And in this, it's just old guy walks around Berlin, you know, or like old guy tries to interrogate gently citizens of Berlin about like their responsibility. And they're all like, yeah, we didn't know anything about it. And then like have a hot dog and back to the court. Like there was no.
I loved it. I loved that.
Yeah, it was all, that was the A story, like what was going on in the court.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant by like, oh, let's like bring in this and like, let's hear what this person has to say about it.
Yeah.
You know, like, while ultimately at the end of the movie, it did, you know, wrap it up with like, here's kind of the point it was trying to get across. I think it does an interesting job of at least showing you like a snapshot of like how different people could think or like justify certain things or not justify them.
Yeah.
So I loved all that it was just like a bunch of people talking about the same thing and they don't have to go, you know, search for some files.
Yeah, right. And the film, like, you know, plays that straight as well. Like they present the four accused and we don't get a lot of time with all of them. And the most important one, Yanning, played by Burt Lancaster, doesn't really say anything unless he's making a big speech. And so we never really get a chance to decide if they're guilty or innocent on our own. But we do know that they, for all their faults, are human. You know, they're human beings. It doesn't really try to make... The closest we get to a monster is Werner Klemperer, you know, the guy from Hogan's Heroes, you know, plays the mean one. And he's like, I did what I had to do and screw you guys. And yeah. But that's about as bad as it gets. And then you have the one guy who's just like, oh no, please don't send me to prison. Yeah.
I loved that whole crew of them because like most of them didn't say much, but you kind of get it with them, like, yeah. And
they're judges, so you've got like judges judging judges. You know, we're literally putting the concept of jurisprudence on trial here. Like, how could things go so wrong? You were the people that were supposed to make sure shit like this didn't happen. And of course, it's never that simple. But yeah, I just find that to be. That's rough, you know? It's just like, how do we judge these people? And of course, the answer is you bring in people like Judy Garland and Montgomery Clift's character, and you go, well, I mean, somebody's got to pay for this. Like, look what happened to these people. Like, this is insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the movie doesn't really have an issue with kind of showing like some of these, like we'll get the justice, but like some of these things are like bigger than, you know, the average person has ever been able to imagine. Like just some of the concepts of like, how does this guy, how do these people judge these people? It's like, and like, what is right or wrong?
Yeah.
We can get to it, but like, you know, when they're going around talking to the average person, it's like sometimes the logic is just like not totally there because you can't, I don't know, you can't reconcile these things.
Yeah, and everybody has to return to normalcy in some way. However they have to do that psychologically, they just have to get their lives back on track, you know? And there are some people who can't ever do that because of what happened to them. So
yeah,
I thought it was fascinating to know that. I mean, Marlene Dietrich is in this. Of course she is. She has to be. And she's playing the wife of this, you know, former army officer who's saying, oh, we didn't know about this. We were good people. There were some people that did. The SS did. My husband was in the army. He didn't know anything about it. And apparently Marlene Dietrich had a real trouble playing that scene. She just got so upset trying to play it because, she herself had been through the war and was on, the Allies' side. She did work for the Allies, and she knew for a fact that people turned a blind eye to it and ignored it. And so she could just barely play this role, like to be this person that she hated so much.
Yeah, I feel like we've done a lot of movies like that. I mean, I guess Star Trek is looking at World War II a lot, but where we have these people who like live through this, and it's always mind blowing to me that, they have to like relive this experience.
Yeah. The fact that we are, judging basically judging like the judicial system makes somebody like Hans Rolf, the defendant or the defense counsel for the defendants, played by Maximilian Schell, makes him, he's a guy, he literally is just doing his job. As the defense lawyer, it's your job to protect your client and to come up with whatever you can, no matter how deep off the deep end in sophistry you get. You've got to make some argument. Even if it's like mentally torturing Judy Garland, on the stand, you've got to win the case. And so he's not a bad guy necessarily, but seeing the pain and just the suffering inflicted on the people who are witnessing or are testifying, he just becomes the movie's villain. And then they have that little thing at the end where he comes in and he's like, "Hey, good job, you won. These guys aren't going to be in jail in 5 years." And it's like, you didn't have to say that. You're a prick.
That's not the point. Yeah.
Like Spencer Tracy's just trying to go home. You really are the bad guy of this film. Jesus.
I liked his character a lot because I felt like he's great. Some of his pleas felt very where he's like kind of trying to make a case against the United States. It felt like genuine. Yeah. Maybe it's because I'm like,
this whole court's on trial. Yeah.
I'm like, hey, he's got a point about that. But then, some of it's like, obviously, like, how could you ever defend this? And then some of it is like, yeah, he's just part of the process. We're trying to figure this out, and he's got to do what he's got. He's like Riker in Measure of a Man.
Ooh, yeah, he totally is. Only Riker had the best intentions, and I get the feeling that this guy, I don't think he cares either way. Yeah, God, he was good. Won the Oscar for Best Actor. He
really
was then, and might still be, the lowest guy down to win, a lead acting Oscar. He's fifth in the lineup, below Marlene Dietrich. Still considered a lead, though, for the purposes of the Academy.
Yeah.
And yeah, he won. He beat out Spencer Tracy, who I'm sure was like, God damn it. Like, I had an 11-minute speech. And this guy, in one of his first English language roles, takes it away. But I think
he's incredible.
It's deserved. Yeah, it's absolutely deserved.
Honestly, I didn't know a lot of the actors in this. Like, I just know their names and stuff, but it's, a bit outside my knowledge, and I've never seen him in any film before, and I was like, I'm totally taken by him.
Yeah. He did win the Oscar. Montgomery Clift was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but did not win, I don't think. And if he, of course, plays... once again, can't remember any of the characters' names. I think his name was Peterson, Air Peterson. They bring him in, and he gives his testimony about being sterilized by the one guy. And that I almost had to turn it off after that. Like, I almost had to just take a break because it was so... I know that it's not true. Montgomery Clift is just an actor who apparently came in and was pretty rough. Like, I think he had been out of the town beforehand and came in, and the director's like, he looks like shit. It's perfect. Get him up there.
You have to suffer. No.
Yeah, Dustin Hoffman. Back to him. But it's just so real. I know that what he is describing didn't happen to him, but did happen to real people. And the way that he delivered that scene, it was just so affecting. And I don't want to get too like wonky on you, but like just as somebody who studied acting, there's kind of a thing that you get after, you know, the 50s, after Lee Strasberg and that whole thing where people start to do more natural acting or quote unquote natural acting. And then before that, there's the kind of, well, here we go, my darling. We're doing this. We're doing that.
Sure.
And like, I like Spencer Tracy. I think he's very natural, but I think he represents in this film the other side of that. There's like the Spencer Tracy kind of acting, and then there's the Montgomery Clift kind of acting where it's just this raw, open, like you just believe that this guy is this person, you know, who had this thing happen to him. It's just,
yeah,
it's
great. That's a good point. Like one thing about this movie that makes it feel, again, so much more like interesting is that there's all these different types of performances being given, like different types of acting.
Oh yeah, Murderer's Row. Yeah,
I can see. Yeah.
Judy Garland.
So it is Judy Garland. Yeah.
She came in to. I'd read that because this is. She had been out of movies for a while. She'd been having a lot of. She went through a lot in her life. You know what I mean? But this was. She came back, and I heard that she was happy that it was a smaller role because it meant, you know, less pressure on her, and she could just kind of dive into this part. And she enjoyed her time so much that it was tough for her. They had to do some stopping and starting in the court scenes because she was having trouble being sad. Like she was just so excited to be like back on a film set, and like everybody clapped for her and gave her a standing ovation when she came in, and so she's like, "Hold on, I got to get sad here. Hold on, I gotta start crying."
That's nice.
Yeah.
This really is. It's like a cross-generational movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is cool.
Yeah, for a movie that came out a long, long time ago, it's like the last generation before the last. William Shatner is the last living member of the cast at this point.
Yeah, and like I was saying, like not being familiar with as many people in this, it was like a, you know, like here's I guess a point of connection to this sort of stuff, which had me just personally interested in like some of these other actors and like some of their other roles. Like I'm curious to see some of their other films, I guess.
Yeah. And it's like a movie for Burt Lancaster, who of course was even at this point, you know, a Hollywood icon. He doesn't say anything until like 2 hours into the movie. He doesn't have any lines until he shouts down Rolf basically when he's going after Judy Garland. In the court.
Yeah, he is amazing in this, and I'm not really familiar with him as much either, but I know the name, I know that he's such a big figure, but I'm just I'm unfamiliar.
It's good too because, you know, he's a fine actor, but he, as a matinee idol, you know, one of the tools in his toolbox is that just this commanding presence. And so as the guy,
that's there.
As the guy who kind of represents the quote unquote, you know, good German, the guy that, you know, did all this stuff, but didn't like it. And we're kind of looking up to, I think it works to have him just be this enigmatic, you know, Sphinx-like figure that you're like, when's he going to say something? What's he going to do? And then finally, of course, he comes out and yells at him. Laurence Olivier was originally cast as Ernst Janning.
Oh, okay.
Which I think would have worked.
Well,
But Lancaster still does a good job. And Marlon Brando originally wanted to play Rolf, and I think they got pretty close with him.
Oh, interesting.
Playing Rolf, yeah.
That would have been a lot different, I feel like.
That would have been a lot different. I think it probably would have been good as well. But yeah, then they eventually landed Maximilian Schell.
There's something Schell, he's got kind of like a, not like complete sliminess to him. Like there's just something like, he's just like sweaty or something. but then like also I feel like he's got some sort of like likable charisma for some reason too.
Yeah.
He's kind of an enigma for me.
Yeah. He really is. I think that's one of his great qualities. There's definitely probably more to say about Judgment at Nuremberg, but since we're already talking about Maximilian Schell, did you get a chance to watch The Man in the Glass Booth at all?
I did, and so even again, speaking of things that aren't on my radar. Like, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
This is way out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now in a time when, a Happy Meal toy can become a movie, I guess you could say that just about anything can be a movie. But back at this time, in this period of Hollywood, plays became movies often. And plays weren't just, written by George Bernard Shaw or whatever. They were developed often for TV first. In fact, that's how Judgment at Nuremberg first came about. It was written and composed for Playhouse 90, which was like an anthology show where they'd put on live action plays. At first, they literally just would shoot actors on a stage. Later, they would sort of, cut it up and edit it a little bit. But it was still basically a play. And so that was adapted into the 3-hour Judgment at Nuremberg. Another criticism from critics at the time that you took like a 90-minute play and you made it 3 hours. Same thing for same thing for The Man in the Glass Booth, which was a play. Actually, it was a book at first written by Robert Shaw. You ever see Jaws?
Yeah.
Quint? Yeah. Robert Shaw, actor, was also a author and a playwright.
Cool.
And he was encouraged by Harold Pinter to turn his book about The Man in the Glass Booth into a play. Some accounts say that Pinter himself is the one who did the adaptation. And then it was a very famous and very successful play on Broadway for a while, and then eventually adapted into a film. And it's funny because it was adapted under this initiative that was going on at the time. I can't remember what it was called. Maybe I'll remember later. But it was taking plays and books and other things and making them into movies that would only be seen for a limited time. And the understanding is that they would never be reproduced in any way. And it was like this sort of making sort of like, living art that was responding to things that were going on in society. And supposed to be divorced from kind of commercial concerns. And so they adapted this.
Indie stuff here.
Yeah, it's sort of like that. Yeah, like an indie initiative. And so, and it was adapted for the film. Robert Shaw initially didn't like at all the adaptation, but later changed his mind. And it stars Maximilian Schell, somewhat controversially, as this Jewish guy. Maximilian Schell, not a Jew, an Austrian. But, I guess if you think about the dual role that he's trying to play, I suppose it helps out.
Yeah, I thought he did really well in it. I guess I didn't know. I can understand the controversy, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting you say that. I suspected that I felt like I got vibes from Nuremberg that it was like very much like a play, especially with all the long shots and everything.
Yeah.
But I didn't know for sure till now, but I knew that this was a play, The Man in the Glass Booth, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It just feels like it the whole time, which I really enjoyed, actually.
And a play of this period as well. Once again, going back into my theater education, we studied plays from different times, and this play was written in 68 or 69 initially. And it's exactly a play from that time, like the long runs and the speeches that he goes on talking about stuff, and the sort of quick switches in dialogue to what do you think about that? How about this? And I could just see an actor just doing this on stage and just walking around, and it just feels like a British play from that time.
Yeah, it's got just that certain cadence to it too. Yeah.
It's such a strange story too, and of course it is.
Oh, yeah.
It is an invention. The general milieu of it is based somewhat on the real life trial of Adolf Eichmann, who was similar to what happens in the play, was tracked down and captured by the Mossad and taken back to Israel for war crime trial.
Yeah, it was hard to while or just as it was over, really think about it all. I was like, what is this movie? What's its deal? But I guess while I was watching it, I was just entertained and I was interested by it, and it was pretty thrilling, I guess, and all the the performances were over the top, especially Maximilian Schell's performance was very over the top.
Yeah.
So it kept me going. But yeah, it was kind of a I don't know, a lot to think about, especially after I just watched Nuremberg.
Yeah, right, which is so solemn, and yeah, it's supposed to make you feel like, oh boy, that was rough. And then you got this guy that's like, hey, a house without a woman, give me a girl, yeah, I'm looking through my telescope, and it's just so strange.
Right, yeah, it's like, at first when it started, I was like, okay, I see what kind of guy, what kind of story we're getting, and I thought like, okay, this will be probably an interesting look inside of a character, but like by the end of it I was like, I don't know, I didn't know what to make of the character really.
Yeah, he's like yeah, it's just constant like verbal diarrhea, like running monologue, and he's like, what are you, Hungarian? All right, well that's a number 3 on the Yiddish scale or whatever. You're not quite Jewy enough, and he's pointing Lugers at people, and it's just like,
yeah,
why would anybody? Maybe it's supposed to be a commentary on like wealth and in New York City, but why would anybody work for this guy? He's nuts.
I thought that's kind of how it was at first, but then it also, I don't know, it goes into like whether or not he was a Nazi or not, and it kind of, I lost the thread a little bit, but yeah, it was interesting.
well, he's got that one character, the Lawrence Pressman character, Charlie, who is like the one guy, because he's his assistant or whatever, and he kind of dumps on him, and he's the one guy who comes in at the end and goes, he's not the guy. Like, what are you doing? Don't stop this. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But and he takes him to his gym. And then
that was a great scene.
And then he's got to have his speech about how, a guy's you have to come every day in a different woman. That's how you stay healthy or whatever. And the guy's like, okay, sure.
I love that stuff. I wish the movie was more of that.
No third act with him ending up in Israel. It's just just keep going with all this stuff.
Yeah, that's where it lost me, to be honest.
Throwing more crazy parties and like, get me half a dozen girls.
Like, I think there's like a couple interesting movie ideas in here, and instead it's like all together. Like, I would have totally been down for just a movie about a paranoid rich guy, who happens to be a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah. And that's like just a element of his character, yeah. But instead, he's got a secret room in his apartment or his condo that's full of like Holocaust memorabilia, like menorahs and things like that, and striped pajamas. And it's like, whoa, next level. We're going up a level here.
Yeah. And then I thought, okay, a movie. So it's actually a movie about a Nazi who has secretly been hiding out as a Holocaust survivor. Like, that's I was like, that's interesting.
Right.
Let's see where that goes.
But hold up a minute. What if it was about a Jewish guy pretending to be a Nazi guy? Yeah, that's where it starts to go off the rails. Why do you think, I mean, I guess I could come up with a couple obvious answers, but like, why do you think he did it? Why would he do that?
That's what I was trying to think, because at the end, it just kind of ends with he's kind of like shot. I don't know. He's like mentally disintegrated, or whatever.
You talked about it being a play before. It is a very theatrical ending. It's just like, well, he's just catatonic now. Like he's not dead, but he won't go on living.
Yeah. So I guess I don't know. Was it just like the horror of what he experienced broke him, or I don't know,
I guess there's definitely like an unspecified mental illness element. Like he's definitely at a point in his life where something's in the cabeza is not going too well. And I think that motivates it, because he hears, marching troops, and he hears things, and we don't know if it's a memory or if it's like an auditory hallucination. What really gets me is he's at the party, and he goes out on the balcony and he takes his shoes off. He actually throws his shoes off his balcony. And then he starts he kicks the statue until his feet bleed. Yeah. Did you get I was racking my brain for any kind of symbolism I could get out of that. No. I couldn't get any. You're like, no, I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if I was being too shallow, but the whole time, or like as it was going, I was just like, at some point, I was just like, when he was kicking the statue, I thought, this is just someone who, you know, is
He's
so overtaken by wealth. Yeah. It's like they've lost their thread to reality, humanity, you know. But by the end, I thought, I was just like, I don't know if this is shallow, but I was just like, he's crazy.
He's crazy. He's crazy. He kept talking about the old JC, and maybe it would have been too much for him to like, oh, I've hurt both of my hands, you know, in the middle or something. So maybe that was too on the nose, but, you know, his feet were pierced too. So maybe we can have his, you know, feet be bleeding or something like that.
Was it in this movie? No, it wasn't even in this. I think it was in the Star Trek episode where someone was saying, like, you couldn't even have... Oh, what was it? Something about the nightmares? Oh, God, I couldn't even remember. But it was something about, like, like dreams of revenge or whatever. It's like you couldn't even imagine revenge because you were so afraid or like
so
you felt
weak and...
so degraded or something like that.
Yeah.
That's like a thing I thought about. Like, is it trying to say something about like he's embraced like what he was afraid of because they had so much power over him at one point? Like,
that's interesting.
But I didn't, nothing about it felt very like speaking to anything real, but I guess, I don't know. I'm not a survivor of like a genocide or whatever. So.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely been planning it like as the movie opens because, you know, he's looking out for the Mercedes or whatever. And they're like, is the Mercedes after you? And he's like, if they're not after me, I'm doing something wrong. Sort of cryptically. So he's like, he's made these calls. He's spent this money in the right places to get, you know, Eric Bana to show up to kick his ass. Right. Which happens.
Oh yeah. I guess I never, for some reason I didn't even think, I was so confused that I didn't even consider like who actually made this all happen. And now I'm realizing it was him.
And at the end, they're testifying. The experts are testifying at the end. And the one guy's like, oh, he paid me off. And then they're like, wait a minute, you. They're like, yeah, he paid us off too. So it's like, oh.
Because at some point I felt like the movie was going for a like, and I was like, this is kind of weird, but I thought it was trying to be like how far is too far when seeking justice, you know?
Okay.
Like,
I can see that.
I thought like, oh, did like someone who just wanted someone to blame, like, frame him, you know? And I was like, this seems weird.
Well, let's keep talking about like his possible motivations and what was going on. We've already gone for a little while, so I wanted to quick wrap up this part by talking about the last part of The Man in the Glass Booth, like his trial and some of his justifications as the character of Dorff. And then we'll save our discussion of his motivations for the Star Trek episode, I think, because I also have big questions about that guy's motivations as well. Yeah. I just wanted to mention really fast, like once they, you know, put him on trial, and of course he is playing, you know, for whatever his reasons, he is playing the ultimate asshole here. You know, like true or false, he has an answer for everything. They are all designed to make him seem as banal and as evil and venal as possible. I loved, and by loved I mean was abhorred by his statement that everybody died for nothing. They basically, the whole work camp was a sham because, you know, those German soldiers didn't want to fight on the front lines. So they had to make it seem like what they were doing was important. Otherwise they'd close the work camp down, right? So if they just gas everybody, nobody to take care of. So it's important that they kill these people as slowly as possible, which is just fucking terrible. And they faked an insurgency, you know, at one point. So it's like, no, we got to take care of this. I can't fight right now. We got problems at this camp. Like, it's just, there's a little bit of a question about whether there's a little bit of a statement by somebody at the end. I can't remember. I think it's maybe the defense counsel or the prosecution where she says, like, you know, even in a time like this, people don't think these things happened. You know, they question whether the Holocaust was real. And he's like, oh, no, it happened. It had to happen because, you know, we had this whole thing, the whole racket going on. Yeah.
I actually, he was pretty incredible over the top in that part. So I was into it. But I do love, like, kind of what you mentioned about like we had to keep it running, even if it wasn't like what they wanted. We had to trick them or fake insurgencies, because that aspect does feel like real stories you see, not just during the Holocaust, but other wars, or like it's just something that is very believable, and it felt like this kind of shines a light on stuff like that, and it kind of makes you think about where those things can manifest in the world, you know. And so that I was still super interested and on board at that point, for sure.
There's something that gets repeated in both Nuremberg and this movie, which is we want things to go back to normal, but we're also willing to pretend that they're normal for a long time, because we just want them to go away. And Janning says that in Nuremberg. He's like, nobody liked this guy, but at the same time, Germany had problems. If this guy could fix it, great, and then we could just get rid of him later. Like, we just wanted to get through this. And they say, too, in the glass booth, you know, they're asking the one survivor, there's like hundreds of you and like a dozen guards. Why didn't you just rush them? And he's like, well, first of all, we were all skin and bones. There's nothing we could have done. But second of all, a lot of us thought this is they're gonna let us go eventually, right? They're the authority figures. We're gonna be good Jews, good Germans, and just do what they say. And nobody really understood the depth of what people were capable of and where this could lead. Like, even the people who were being pushed around were like, no, okay, we'll just go along with this. And if we do what they say, they're going to let us go eventually. And yeah, everybody is sort of deluding themselves about how far things can accelerate.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting in this and Nuremberg, and just if you look at a lot of the other real-life Nuremberg trials, is how like the slide into fascism occurred, and how it sort of makes me think of it's not 100% apt comparison, but that whole thing of like the boiling frog situation, where it's like, you know, one day it's like, well, you set up these camps, but we're just, you know, like, where if you're an average person in the society, you can like convince yourself or justify it in a way, and it just, things slowly change, and you're like, well, it could be worse, you know. So it's like it just keeps on going, and I think you get that in all of these. You can see that in all these things where it's like just the average person, you know, the average judge or whatever, being like, well, I felt like it was better to uphold the law than do whatever, you know.
Yeah, people just can't really. It kind of goes in hand with the people who think that it didn't happen, you know, or it's a hoax or whatever. People just can't get their minds around what people can be capable of at certain times.
Yeah.
Okay, well, our conversation is not over, but we're going to take a break for a word from our sponsor, and we will be back in a little bit with more backtracking. How would you describe Just Enough Trope? We are the Just Enough Trope podcast. I'm your host, Caliban, joined as always by my co-host.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
Oh no, does this mean they can hear all the things I yell at the TV during Downton Abbey?
Why did you do that?
How do you plead?
Let the game begin. Yeah, check these fresh moves. Oh!
Don't shoot man in face.
This isn't the Save Gotham fundraiser.
It's the Chill Family Reunion.
Master Yoda assigned a Padawan to this bold Jedi.
I believe it's pronounced Padawan.
Oh, Padawan, excuse me.
Hey, it's getting late. I think Ralph's going to want his motorcycle back.
Go jerk off the pictures of Dean Gray.
I am freaking getting old.
Yeah, I noticed the life clock was blinking in your hand.
Get out of here, Wilson. Go fight the Teen Titans or something.
I'm unkillable, not unwoundable.
You like Sailor Moon, right? Why don't you sail on this
Wow.
Just Enough Trope. News, reviews, and geek fondue. Every Monday on the Just Enough Trope podcast network.
Loving me never have a say. You so be sorry.
What?
Okay, we're back, and it's time to talk about the Trek side of the equation. I think some of Trek's most gripping hours were inspired by real-life events, especially the real-life events of the tumultuous 20th century, and it's an extended allegory of Germany's invasion and exploitation of Europe during World War II that makes up the core of the setting of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, specifically the persecution of the Bajorans by the Cardassians and their campaign of demoralization and eradication, which is, of course, reminiscent of the Nazi persecution of the Jews and other ethnic minorities via the Holocaust. In the world of Star Trek, Bajor eventually throws off its chains of its oppressors, but the scars of occupation are still painful, and a drive for justice still exists, both on the part of the victims and, in some cases, the oppressors as well. We're talking about Duet.
They say he butchered thousands.
He commanded a forced labor camp.
Now millions cry for justice.
Let me know when you hang the Cardassian.
But only one will stand against him.
Look at the hate in her eyes.
The war is over.
How many Cardassians did you kill?
We had no choice.
But Kira's battle has just begun.
He was there. He did it.
On the next episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
This has got to be the 4th or 5th time I've talked about Duet in a podcast setting.
Okay, so you're totally prepared then.
And it never gets, well, maybe I got to find my old notes, but it never gets old. Like it is almost completely evergreen watching this episode. It's a great episode. I love it, and like I said, I mean, you can just anytime you can watch this and it still chills me, you know.
Yeah, even from like one of the first scenes where Kira is talking about what she experienced, it's like it hits me pretty hard. I remember this being like it's later on in the first season, right? But I remember it being one when I first started going through Deep Space Nine, like really hooking into and being like, especially because you know how the first season is with a lot of these Star Treks. But this was one where I was like, okay, this is going to be something for sure.
This is, not all. In fact, most first season episodes of any Star Trek are not always great. Got a couple good ideas that you turn into great episodes. But I remember, and DS9, who I know people love, is no stranger to that. Like, there are a lot of not really all that great episodes of DS9. There's a lot of world building as well, which is like, okay, we have to establish that this is this, but the conceit of whatever this episode is, the leprechauns or whatever, it's just not that great. But this one is definitely this one, and there's one just before this called, I can't remember what it's called, but it's Brian Keith plays this Bajoran who lives on this planet, and he won't leave. They've got to clear it out because according to the treaty, like the Cardassians get this planet or something like that. And he plays this guy that's like, nope, I was born here. I'm going to die here. I don't care. And Kira has to sort of like get to know him and try to convince him. And by the end of the episode, like she understands him. She feels bad for him. She gets what it means to like have something that's yours, that's your place, especially after things have been taken from you, like what the Cardassians took from him. But she still goes out and like basically burns his house down, and she's like, "You gotta go. You're leaving." And it's like, whoa, this is going to be a different kind of Star Trek show. And then an episode like Duet shows up, and you're like, whoa, I had to look up that this was the first time I saw the episode. I didn't realize that it was kind of in a way based on The Man in the Glass Booth, because like you, I didn't know that movie existed because it only came out on Blu-ray, a little while ago. But yeah, the similarities are uncanny. I think it owes a lot to Glass Booth.
Well, yeah, and now that we've talked about it, the movie, and I've kind of thought about it even more, like this kind of has a lot of the elements of it, but like for me, it made more sense in my head, I guess. What they were trying to get across.
Oh, so like as far as his motivations go?
Yeah, the motivations of him, or like even I mentioned in Glass Booth how they did have, I thought they had this element of like, are you taking your revenge too far type thing. That was something with Kira in this, but it never felt like offensive to question that. It felt like something real that someone would experience, and not just like, are you taking it too far, but like how do you as a person, how are you dealing with this? It didn't feel patronizing or something.
No, not at all. I think that there's a definite theme in this of the fact that war makes victims of everybody. it isn't just the losing side. It isn't just the people who are killed or are put in a concentration camp. And doesn't mean that I say just, let the people go. The people that ran the camp or whatever, the people that gave the order, they're not innocent. But
no.
But people down the line, the people who really are following orders because they are too scared to resist or they don't know what they can do, like they are also victimized by this. And it really gives us a great early brushstroke on like Kira's character, that we see how cruel she can be to Brian Keith in his house, or
right.
or people who worked at Gallitep camp. But the second that she learns that this is just some kook, this isn't the guy, she could have sent him down, to go on trial anyway. But immediately she's like, "You got to get out of here! Like, why are you doing this? Like, I understand that you." Like all of us were hurt by like what happened. So you shouldn't do this.
Yeah. It feels very, it just feels so real. Like her, like the revenge or whatever she wants feels justified, even though they're bringing it into question.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because she gave that kind of speech in the beginning and I cried and I was like, oh, that's awful. So like, they kind of win you over to it, but And the episode kind of twists it, because it does make you think at first it's going to be about she just wants to get revenge on a file clerk, and that's not what it's about.
Right.
On top of that, they also have this other random drunken Bajoran character.
Yeah,
who
that's the part that doesn't really work for me.
Well, so I thought it was just going to be about, like, we need to learn to accept these former, perpetrators of this genocide.
Yeah.
And instead he serves this other purpose. I thought it was kind of a red herring.
Well, it's a little bit, because like they decided, I guess that we got to have this guy get stabbed, so it's sad at the end, and we can see Kira say, this isn't how we're going to do it. Like, this isn't enough. We can't kill people who, weren't really like who behind this. So, but to have a character, stab him, then we have to set him up in an early scene. So he's like, is that a Cardassian? It's like, who is this guy? What?
Yeah. So I guess it does go there, but it just felt very, they didn't need the death in the end, I will say.
I don't think so either. I think we already accomplished, what we were trying to do there with the scene before, where Kira is ready to let this guy go,
Yeah, I think, the reality of it is that there's not just like an easy reconciliation of something like this, but they just wanted the episode to wrap up,
Yeah,
so.
Plus I love how Odo's like a really good constable unless he's not. Like, let some political prisoner get stabbed to death on your promenade. Like, it's like, come on, man. Like, do your job. And then it's like, oh, I got stabbed. I know he's like an old guy and he's sick, but we've also established that like sick bay's like right there. It's like 8 steps from where you are. You can't just like throw him on a bed and have Bashir wave a thing on him.
I guess now thinking about it too, like the whole time Gul Dukat's like, if something bad happens to this guy,
it's on you. Yeah.
It's on you. And then something bad does happen to him. And from his perspective, like nothing has changed.
Yeah. And we never revisit that specific. I mean, clearly we know that many bad things happen with Dukat in the future of the series, but we never revisit this specific thing. And I think it's partially because, there was a TV writer strike at this point, and so we didn't get 26 episodes out of the first season, because the very next episode is, oh, child, are you going to teach people that the wormhole aliens aren't gods or whatever? And then blowing up Keiko's school. Like, we immediately get into that in the next episode.
That was that? Oh, I thought that was way earlier.
No, that happens, next. So.
Oh, man. I viewed that as like one of the like Rocky Start episodes.
Oh, okay.
I guess it's still later on. Okay.
Yeah, and then they come back from that with a 3-parter in the first part of the second season with freaking Skeletor is in there, and we're running around doing stuff. So this is really ambitious.
No one saw that coming.
An ambitious show, yeah. So that's what I want to talk. We can talk about specific things as we go, I guess. I wanted to quickly praise Harris Yulin as Marritza, who is, you think of him as like the judge from Ghostbusters 2, and he's definitely a guy who's been in.
That's who that was. Okay.
Yeah, he's definitely been in a lot of stuff. Like he's been in, he's one of that guys. It's like, oh, it's that guy.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you give him this thing and he runs with it.
He was so good.
And
yeah.
and I think this is now that I've seen this is the first time I've talked about Duet having seen Man in the Glass Booth. I see all these things now. Like I know he watched Maximilian Schell just do his thing, in Glass Booth, and he's like, I'm going to take some of that energy and I'm going to put that in my Gul Darhe'el.
Yeah, some of that energy of like I know you think I'm evil, so I'm going to embrace it.
So I'm going to be the bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think of when Shell's character was like, I'm going to prove I'm going to win or whatever. Where it's like, but it's by like embracing how evil I am.
Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about with the idea of the motivation, because in Man in the Glass Booth, you have a character who if we're going to take what the movie gives us, is a Jew who do they tell us like that he was in a concentration camp for sure? Do you guys have like a tattoo and everything?
He like burns it, right? Is that?
Well, see that was his SS tattoo.
Oh, okay.
Which I don't think they ever explicitly show us that he's got. He just burns that patch of skin, so now we don't ever know. I can't remember. I don't know. So anyway, okay, because I guess it's important because it's going to tell us his motivation. But let's say he is a Jew who suffered under the Nazis in Germany.
He had to have been.
Yeah.
Because they talk about the paperwork that he allegedly stole, or like he
to be Goldman.
Himself.
Yeah, right.
But then he really is Goldman. So yeah, he would be.
Right. Well, I mean, Goldman is no one, because of the paperwork. Anybody could be Goldman. But so he's somebody
That's true.
who was persecuted and then pretends to be one of the persecutors. And then in Duet, we've got a guy who was a Cardassian, but was just a clerk, was nobody, and pretends to be the persecutor. So you've got and just to oversimplify, you've got a Jew pretending to be a Nazi, and you've got a Nazi pretending to be a worse Nazi in Duet.
Yeah, it's almost not the opposite, but it's flipped.
Yeah. So, what are their individual goals in both cases?
Well, I feel like Duet is real. It's maybe why I thought it was the better version was because it's just it's more straightforward to me, where it's he was the file clerk.
Yeah.
But he knew what was wrong. He's not like these people who were denying, we didn't know.
Right. Or try to equivocate. Right.
He knew it was wrong, but he also felt like I have to, go along with this because what else can I do? But now he feels the guilt of it. So he's taking this on to take the punishment because he thinks he deserves more punishment than what he's gotten away with.
Survivor's guilt or an oppressor's guilt or something like that. Yeah. He also says at one point that Cardassia is never going to be better if we don't confront this. Because I get the impression, that everybody has that there's a party line. They didn't get caught the way that the Nazis did, which is literally other nations' armed forces rolling up and seeing a bunch of people in striped pajamas. The Bajorans basically left and / were pushed out by the Cardassians left / were pushed out by the Bajorans, and then the Federation shows up to help and wasn't necessarily present seeing camps like Gallitep and stuff like that. So they kind of got away with it.
Yeah, because they're just still hanging out there.
Right.
There's no trials.
Yeah, Gul Dukat would be like, oh, I've heard these rumors about this Holocaust, but there's a lot of... I think you'll find that they're not so strong. So this is a guy who's like, no, we have to, people need to know about this. And specifically, I feel that they do because I was psychologically tortured every night by being exposed to these atrocities that I could do nothing about. And so I'm going to at least try to use my death as a way to get some power back here and try to renew or rebuke the spirit of, what my people did to the Bajorans. So you got that. Why does a Jewish guy want to pose as a Nazi?
Yeah, that's again. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I got that answer from the movie, or like,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't necessarily need to like be like, here's the answer, but I don't know. I didn't really, when that twist happened, I was like, oh,
I have to imagine.
Okay.
Like I haven't like charted the course or curve of Holocaust denial, but if you told me that it increased, you know, in the 70s or rose in the 70s, I guess I could see that happening. And so I think maybe a part of it is there's this undercurrent of people are wondering, is that really true? Like 6 million people died. Like, do we know that?
Okay.
And there's maybe doubt about it. I could see a guy who I think we can agree is becoming a bit unbalanced, who also is obsessed with survivor's guilt because he survived the camps. He became very successful and very rich and probably resents his fate. And he's collected all these memorabilia and old things. And so maybe he feels like he wants to leave this sort of, sybaritic lifestyle behind and use his death to sort of remind people how terrible it was and how real it was. And by taking on this, persona of Adolf Dorff, I think his name is.
Yeah.
That's what I could come up with. But if you also told me that it was just, hey, it's just weird 70s, man, who knows? Like if it was just because he's ostensibly a Jew, but he's also like playing into some of the bad parts of, stereotypes of Judaism. He's got all this money. He's like rating people on their Jewishness. He's like, oh, your mom wasn't a Jew, but your dad was. Well, okay, I guess you're a Jew, like that sort of thing. He's, a rich guy, lives in the upper East Side of New York or whatever. And so if you wanted to tell me that, wouldn't it be crazy? Like Robert Shaw's like, wouldn't it be crazy if a Jew actually turned out to be a Nazi? Whoa. Who knows? Freak out.
Uh-huh.
If you just told me it was that, I think I could probably believe that too.
Because where I was going from the beginning was like that the money and, the power had kind of corrupted him. And so he, even someone who has experienced like the horrors of the Holocaust, like isn't exempt from like becoming rich, powerful, like anti-Semitic, like
anti-Semitic Jew, sure.
Yeah, so I thought that was an interesting way to look at it, but then I don't know. I guess I'd have to watch it again because I watched it in conjunction with these three things.
Yeah,
and it was all these different ideas.
A lot of thinking about
flying.
The Holocaust. Yeah.
Just in Nuremberg alone, is all these like ideas. But I can see where you're going with it.
And I think it's definitely in the vein of like a late 60s, early 70s sort of piece of art. It definitely wants to leave you thinking and asking yourself that question. I actually read Roger Ebert's review of the film of the time, and he said that he acknowledged the fact that it is very open-ended as to what we're supposed to believe, but he believes that it's, I'll just read from his review, it's to pose disturbing notions about the nature of human identity, guilt, and responsibility, and it's to illustrate the ways in which the Holocaust was a wrong of such monstrous evil that individual personalities were obliterated by it. Films like Judgment at Nuremberg began with the assumption that morality could be upheld and responsibility assigned. The Man in the Glass Booth is an infinitely more despairing work. And I think that is accurate.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that too, because that's with Nuremberg. It was a little bit like at the end. Where
Grandpa
put a thing on it.
Yeah, Grandpa comes in at the end and he's like, "Nope, this is what it is." Yeah, Spencer Tracy is telling us what is true and just, and we're like, "Yeah, okay, sure."
Yeah. Whereas what I loved about it was that again, like it's too much for just one person to like. Come down with the definitive truth on.
Yeah.
Or three guys, But...
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That's I really appreciate the Man in the Glass Booth. Like I'm probably gonna rewatch it again too.
Yeah.
See what I can pick up because like I said, I only just realized now that he set up the whole scheme, which makes it infinitely more interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to carve out a large block of time, but I'll definitely rewatch Nuremberg someday, but I'll be doing it to see Montgomery Clift. I'll be doing it to see the performance of Maximilian Schell and Judy Garland, not for the questions or the morality that the show is trying to raise, because I agree with the movie completely. But if I was going to watch The Man in the Glass Booth, it would be to sort of swim in that uncertainty of like, what is going on here? And maybe something so horrible can happen that there just is no up or down anymore. Like it could just destroy a person, and it doesn't even make any sense, you know? And I think you get that with Harris Yulin's portrayal of Marritza in Duet.
Oh yeah, he's incredible.
Oh, so is I definitely want to say that Nana Visitor is so good in this too. And when you think about the fact, you think about the fact that I don't think she'd done anything like this before. You know, I look at her like career before this, and it's a guest spot on Rockford Files or something like that, and being, you know, very talented, but being a young actress and being handed this complicated role where it's like you're a good guy, but you're also a terrorist, and you did all these horrible things for good reasons, and we're going to immediately out of the gate throw these episodes at you where you have to show this nuance and show how much it hurts you to have to be the bad guy sometimes, but also the fury at the people who are the real bad guys. And just the way that she handles it, not only in this first season, but throughout the series, is just, it's fantastic. It's one of the best character arcs in Star Trek.
Oh, 100%.
I'm glad you agree. Let's talk about technology and the technology of the future, which makes Trek go. It facilitates what the characters are doing just as often. It's the complication that Trek characters are dealing with. On every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies. We add what we get to the non-Trek media, and we subtract it from the Trek episode and see how each would be different. It's our technological exchange. And here is our list of technologies. It's a list of 10 items. It's phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drive, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And I'm going to roll on our randomly selecting device here. And it is number 1, phasers.
Okay.
We're screwed. If we added phaser technology to Judgment at Nuremberg, and also, I suppose, The Man in the Glass Booth, and took it away from Duet, how would things change?
Well, Nuremberg doesn't really call for
none of these. There are no guns in any of these.
No, there's guns in The Man in the Glass Booth, right?
Yeah, technically that's true.
They would have jumped him with phasers.
Hold it right there. Boy. Well, we've done this. We've had to deal with this before, in that we have to kind of open up the world of the piece a little bit. So, you're imagining post World War II, a war fought with phasers. Okay,
so World War II had phasers. They didn't just come into being.
And I'm just assuming that also means that the Enola Gay dropped a photon torpedo on Hiroshima.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess you would have another situation where you have one technology that's way more advanced than everything else.
Yeah,
and I think that would create an even worse war, probably.
Yeah, the unbalance. You're thinking like just one side, and presumably the winning side had phasers, so it was the Allies with their phaser Tommy guns, and the Germans are like, whoa, no.
Or even just like, it just seemed, if both sides had phasers, but like everything else about the war isn't compatible with phasers, so like, you don't have good protection against it, or like,
right.
What does that do to a tank?
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah, just going right through a pillbox or something.
All of a sudden, everything else is useless. So
everybody's just fighting over like this phaser technology. It's the most important thing. I was hoping that this section could be fun after we just talked about murder and death, but if we bring the murder and death back, it would probably make the death camps really efficient.
Sure, if that's what they're going for.
I think it was Glass Booth, right, where they were talking about. Oh no! It was Judgment at Nuremberg, where they were talking about they had that they do the scene where they go back and see the defendants and they were in jail, and the defendants are like, "Oh, we didn't do this. You couldn't even kill that many people. Hey, Randy, could you kill that many people?" And Randy's like, "It's not the killing that's the problem. It's the getting rid of the bodies is the problem. Like, if you had enough guys to get rid of the bodies, then you'd be all right." And so maybe with the phasers, if you just shoot somebody and they disintegrate, job's done. No bulldozers, no mass graves.
But then, oh my God, we did it. Because then you don't have all the horrific footage to show to your grade school students.
Oh my God. So you've got a world where the judgment at Nuremberg is they're actually trying to figure out if the Holocaust happened or not.
Yeah, then you give credence to all the Holocaust denialists,
There's no scene. Yeah, that's right. There's no scene then where Lawson can show all the footage and everything. Oh, and I have to say, for a movie that's made in 1961, I think there's a lot of stuff that there was no rating back then, but there was the Hays Code. There's a lot of stuff that probably got past the Hays Code only because this had to do with war. You're always seeing nude bodies in this war footage, but the idea of Judy Garland's character, Irene Hoffman being underage when she's hanging out with this other guy, Montgomery Clift being sterilized, and also the character of Colonel Lawson, the prosecutor, who we see in one scene, he's like drunk and he's like, "I don't know what these fucking guys are doing. Well, this shit's probably going to be fine, right? Yeah, we won. Yay."
Yeah.
And then there's a really great touch when he's he's showing everybody the footage. They make him look like shit. I know it's in black and white, so you can't really tell, but I have a feeling that they kind of reddened his nose up a little bit and they really put the bags under his eyes. You can tell that this guy's been doing this for 2 years, but every single one of these trials is just killing him.
So they probably got away with it because it's I don't want to say it's almost like propaganda, but it's okay, you've got this message that we think is worth getting across to people something like that.
Yeah. But anyway, so, oh God, that's horrifying.
That makes me wonder though how the Cardassians, how are they having such a hard time with the bodies? Don't they can just vaporize? I don't know.
I guess. Maybe, I don't know. We never really get into that. They stun people, and then every once in a while, somebody gets disintegrated because it's the only option. There's that TNG episode where Riker falls in love with a lady, but she's been genetically programmed to be an assassin. Because there's this old feud between their races, and so even if she touches the person, she has a virus in her, and he he jumps in right before she's going to touch the person. She's like, "Don't touch her," and he shoots her and stuns her. But I guess she's also engineered to not be stunned because she just sort of backs up a little bit. And he's like, "I'm warning you," and then he just vaporizes her to get rid of her. But we never find out how. Maybe that would use too much ammo, or maybe just as a mining camp they don't have the right facilities to do this. I hate this.
It gets overheated a video game.
yeah, it's overheated. It's got to cool down. Yeah, before we get to installing phasers in the showers, I think let's move on to the.
Oh my god!
Let's move on to the Trek episode. We take phasers out of the world of DS9. Then what?
Well, I mean. Well, there's knives in this episode.
Yeah, there is.
So that's
there are knives. Yeah.
I mean, kind of this opposite of what we were just talking about, but
so do we stick to the letter of the law here? Because phasers is a technology that's used mainly by the Federation for humanitarian reasons. Other races seem to have no problem using disruptors.
Oh, which is a same thing to me.
Okay, all right. Because I was going to say, what if the Bajorans had phasers, but the Cardassians had disruptors? No, the Bajorans don't have any weapons at all. But if we're just talking about, energy weapons here, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Well,
it's got to be energy weapons.
It would be a lot more bloody, I think, fighting. We know that Kira has seen and done a lot, and it's affected her. But I wonder if she herself had to slit some throats or gouge eyes out, or blow somebody's head off, with a bullet gun, if it would make it even worse for her. I'd have to imagine that killing could be... They do a pretty good job, I think, in Star Trek of making killing still seem horrible. There's that great scene in The Wounded where Miles is describing killing a Cardassian, and it's not that he shot him and then the Cardassian fell down and crawled out for his mother and bled everywhere. He just disappeared. And, O'Brien's still like, I see that like every night in my dreams, like this guy just evaporating. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I think as Star Trek has gotten more modern, they've been able and like just put more into those effects. Like they've even been able to like show how violent
like
that can actually be.
Michael Burnham like eats a energy ball or whatever and like dissolves from the inside out. She's like, ah.
Yeah. Or like there's been a couple like in Picard. There's been a couple like scenes where someone like phasers them, like they commit suicide, I think.
Yeah, right.
I'm trying to remember. And it's awful.
And it blows chunks out
like,
of them. Yeah, right, yeah.
But if that happened in like, the original series or TNG, it would be very like stagey and like, and they would disappear, like Obi-Wan Kenobi style. So
yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you don't have that. It's just a lot of people getting shot with bullets, like it's a mob movie.
I also imagine it being like what was it? Was it Enemy Mine, where they go to the one planet or the planet they're on. They just have all those guys there, but then they just have
like
guns.
pump shotguns.
Yeah. So it'd be something like that.
Eat lead spoon heads. Yeah.
So we'd have like gritty, like 80s punk Cardassians, which would be cool.
Oh yeah, they got a cross earring for some reason, and yeah.
Bajorans too, like they definitely fit into that. They already got the jewelry and everything.
Yeah, but Kira's got a kind of a punk thing going on.
Yeah, so that would be pretty cool.
Okay, I could see that. Yeah, much bloodier then.
Yeah, and wardrobe changes for sure.
Oh God. Okay. Well, I'm done. I don't know about you, but I think we did it.
We had a task, and I think you can count that as completed.
Yes, and when we did it, we were clean. We came back clean. What are we talking about on the next episode of BackTrekking?
Okay, so you're not going to believe me.
Oh no. Okay.
Okay, so next episode, we are going to be discussing how the original series episode Miri is comparable to the Andy Griffith Show.
Okay, all right.
And we'll let people try and figure that out as we go. But we're going to be watching the episode "The Pickle Story" from season 2, episode 11. Of the Andy Griffith Show.
Okay. Well, we got our work cut out for us, and I think that we just proved that we're workers. We get it done. So I'm not worried about it at all.
There's plenty of other things to be worried about right now. So
yes, a disease that kills old people and leaves the young behind. Yeah, sounds familiar. Well, that's it for this week's BackTrekking. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you like the show, tell a friend, and you can follow us at BackTrekking on Twitter. We're always on Twitter talking about Star Trek or just shit posting Star Trek memes. Tell us also what you think that we should cover on future episodes. We're always looking for good ideas, and if you know of an episode that was inspired by something, some other piece of media or something in the real world, we'd love to hear about it. So let us know on Twitter. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
Go check me out on Twitter. I'm at Gooey Fame, and you go find all my other podcasts from there.
Awesome. And I am at K-A-1-I-B-A-N on Twitter, and our network is at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. Check it out, and all the other Just Enough Trope shows. And that's it for us. We will see you soon, and until then, keep on trekking.